So President Putin has just landed in India, and it's pretty interesting to see what's been going on here. So let's start here with this. He's going to be making some deals. I mean, there's no doubt about that. They're going to be making deals, financial deals, military deals, and here we are. President Vladimir Putin has arrived in India for a 2-day state visit, and you see his plane arriving. Putin lands in India today, his first visit since the ICC issued an arrest warrant for child abductions in Ukraine. So now neither India nor Russia are signatories to the Rome Statute, so that doesn't really matter as far as Putin being arrested or anything like that. That's not going to happen. On the agenda, S-400 missiles. Okay, India purchases these, and they're probably going to purchase some more Su-57 jets. India could purchase F-35s, but they're buying the Russian version instead because, well, frankly, we've been pretty horrible to India, we, the United States, in our trade war policies here, particularly in the Trump administration. And discounted oil, and particularly like slapping 50% sanctions on India for the discounted oil, for the oil that they're playing hard rather than trying to woo India. So India-Russian trade has surged from 10 billion to 69 billion since the invasion. So India is profiting, and Russia is being supported economically by India. So that's why this kind of thing is important. I rarely agree with Che Bao's, but his commentary, this last line particularly, is spot on. Vladimir Putin's arrived on his first visit to India in 4 years. The president's plane landed in the Indian Air Force Base, Palam, embraces and red carpet. Like, these guys actually do like each other. But even though Putin's an authoritarian and Modi is the leader of a democratic nation, he's still kind of a populist who is just trying to make his deals, and he doesn't care that Putin is doing what he's doing to Ukraine. This must be, Bowles' line here is, this must be more of that isolation that the Europeans are obsessed with. Well, clearly, I mean, obviously that's sarcasm, right? But it's not isolation. India is more than happy to embrace Russia and Russian oil. Okay, RT posted Modi saying, "I am pleased to welcome my friend President Putin to Delhi." He wrote that on X. The friendship between India and Russia has been tested by time. It has brought immense benefits to our peoples. Okay, so let's stop and talk about this for just a moment, because Russia and India have a long history. So India was a British empire state that was kind of conquered by the British and then held within the empire for some time, broke away from the United Kingdom, and then in the Cold War had more of a relation with Russia than it had with the West, or had very close relations with the Soviet Union. And they always felt like the Soviet Union treated them well, which they did treat them reasonably well, given like what has happened or what has transpired. So I'll show you on a map in just a moment. During Putin's upcoming state visit to India, New Delhi and Moscow are reportedly ready to sign major trade and defense deals. Videos of RT ritual with Putin's portrait have already appeared, symbolic gesture of honor and devotion. Like, Indians really do think highly of Putin. This isn't staged. This isn't show. It's not North Korea. Okay. Now, India is working on a $2 billion Russian submarine deal as Putin visits. According to Bloomberg, India will pay about $2 billion to lease a nuclear-powered submarine from Russia. What do they need a nuclear-powered submarine for? Well, I'll show you in just a moment. Talks for leasing the attack submarine from Russia had stalled over the years because of price negotiations. The two sides have now agreed on the deal, with Indian officials visiting a Russian shipyard in November. They said India expects to take delivery of the vessel within 2 years. So again, that's $2 billion going back into Russia's pocket, right? India faces a Russian oil dilemma: cheap crude, costly consequences. Russia's share of India's crude imports have surged from near zero to 35 to 40%. That before the war, they weren't really buying Russian oil since 2022. Okay, it's now making New Delhi one of Moscow's top customers. There are steep discounts, at times as low as $35 a barrel, that have saved India an estimated $5 billion US. So India's profiting, but they're also propping up Russia at the same time. But the flip side is stark. India and China now absorb over 90% of Russia's seaborne oil exports, enabling the Kremlin to stabilize wartime revenues despite Western sanctions. How long can India balance between economic security with mounting strategic and moral costs? So it's an open question, and that is a good question. And Putin's going to try to double down. Now, while he's there, they're about to launch RT India. Everything's ready for this launch. Now, this is a really interesting phenomenon to me because what India has done is just take RT in English, and you'll see, I've done this before. I've taken an RT article, I've cut and pasted it, and just popped it into Google, and then you'd see it pop up on Indian websites. It's fascinating, or other African websites, just whole cloth, pure plagiarism. And RT is more than happy to do that, or to have them do that, because they want to spread their information war. Okay. Putin promised to liberate Donbass, and no, Putin was in an interview just yesterday or the day before with India Today, and he's being interviewed, and they're asking him questions, and he promised to. There's three parts to this. He promised to liberate Donbass and so-called Novorossiya, no matter what, all the way to the administrative borders, because those bad Ukrainians just kept coming and trying to attack those poor, defenseless, innocent, independent people in the Donbass. And then here in this next clip, I'm not going to show you the first clip, the second and third I'll show you, Putin on why Russia is not looking to go back to the G8. India's economy and purchasing power ranks third. And what about UK and other countries in terms of purchasing power parity? So here's, they're asking about, do you want to be part of the G8?
Back to being a part of the G8, because that's a lot, there are a lot of reports on that. So is that something that Russia is looking at?
Нет.
No.
That's an interesting answer, sir. You're very clear about that.
Да.
Well, yes.
Дело вот в чем. Дело в том,
The thing
что
is,
я когда-то так случилось, я сейчас не буду вдаваться в
well,
детали.
I'm not going into detail, but I basically stopped going to these meetings back in the past.
Yeah, because the G8 kicked Russia out after the invasion in Ukraine in 2014.
Очень понятно, почему
That's the first thing. Secondly,
входящие
I can hardly understand why countries of the G7
G7
call themselves G7, you know, in Russia it's called G, like for great, big. The thing is, India's economy in purchasing power ranks third.
Okay, so that's a legitimate point. Like, India probably should be invited to the party as well. Now, what Russia actually wants, what Putin wants to do, is he wants to reframe things and have a BRICS version that competes. So you have China, and China's a powerhouse, and so BRIC is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And so he wants to have his own version that rivals what would be in the West.
And what about the UK or other countries in terms of purchasing parity capacity? I think it's 10th place or something like that. I don't remember.
And Russia's not doing all that hot itself. Let's go on and look at this. We are not merely selling technology to India. We are sharing it. He's talking about the chummy relationship that he has with India. And again, it goes back. There's some history here, but let's listen.
It is a different level, a different quality of relations we have with India, and we value this. We see how India values this relationship too. Why? Allow me to emphasize again. We are not simply selling technology, we are sharing it, and it is a very rare thing to see in the sphere of military technical cooperation. It speaks to the level of trust between the two countries and the level of trust between the two peoples, I would put it in this way. We have a broad portfolio indeed, including naval construction, rocket and missile engineering, and aircraft engineering. India stands out as one of our reliable and privileged partners in this area. We are not merely selling something.
Okay, he's just going to repeat himself about that kind of thing again. Okay, so now why? Well, let's look at the map. So here's India, and here is Russia, and the map is going to be interesting. Here's China, and here's Pakistan. Now, India and Pakistan hate each other, right? I mean, that's just like this has gone on for a long time where they hate each other and they've continued to hate each other and they're going to continue to hate each other. They're rivals. A small war broke out over the border just this last year. India and China hate each other, and they've had border wars over time. During the Cold War, Russia, with the Soviet Union, and India got along pretty well. That was a backlash to India breaking away from the West, the British Empire, and becoming part of its own. And the Soviet Union kind of seized on that chummy relationship between them. Now, during the Cold War, the U.S. had wanted to spy on the Soviets, and India was kind of a friend. They weren't the Brits, like the U.S. wasn't the Brits, and so they had kind of a better relationship. But then they would do something with India to kind of check the Soviets, but then they would also work with the Pakistanis. And when the U.S. would work with India, the Pakistanis would hate them, and when the U.S. would work with Pakistan, the Indians would hate them. And Pakistan was actually closer in order to spy on the Russians, right? And so there's that. Now, India and China, again, they hate each other, and they've been at fighting with each other for some time. But there's this weird like love triangle here between Russia and China. Russia really is trying to buddy up to China, and China is using Russia to get cheap materials and kind of becoming the dominant big brother. And then Russia and India, where Russia has kind of been the big. But remember, India is the largest country by population on Earth. Second only to, or the second in order is China, and then that's followed by the U.S. And the U.S. is a long way behind that. So India and China, and China has ambitions for Taiwan. And if something cooked off with China and Taiwan, you're looking at South Korea and Japan and the Philippines and maybe Indonesia and Australia and would be the block. And India might be part of that, but India so it's weird the way that these countries are all connected, where they don't like each other, but they have these different alliances or different backgrounds or history. But the relationship between Russia and India, it's real, it's strong, and they've just been building these binding cords between them for years. And so I think that a lot of bad agreements, from Putin's perspective, it would be good agreements, are going to come out of this conference. So we'll see how that all plays out. Tell me what you thought about what you saw here. Put that in the comments below. Thank you for your time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person who cares about Ukraine.